Commander adjusted his ceremonial battle armor one final time as his transport ship descended toward the massive orbital station known as the Crucible. The warrior had trained his entire life for this moment, the grand combat tournament that occurred once every solar cycle, where the galaxy's finest fighters gathered to prove their species' superiority in combat. The Crucible stretched for kilometers in every direction, a gleaming testament to advanced engineering that housed millions of spectators from across the known galaxy. Crystalline viewing chambers allowed perfect sight lines to the central arena, while gravitational fields kept atmospheric requirements separate for each species. The station hummed with excitement as representatives from dozens of civilizations prepared for the opening ceremonies. Its mandibles clicked with anticipation. They had dominated the tournament for the past 3 cycles, their natural exoskeletons and razor-sharp claws making them nearly unbeatable in single combat. His own record stood at 47 victories without defeat. Today, he would face new challengers and defend his people's honor once again. As he made his way through the registration halls, observed the other competitors with a warrior's practiced eye. The delegation moved with their characteristic fluid grace, their 4 arms and enhanced reflexes making them formidable opponents. The massive stomped past in their powered armor, each footstep causing minor tremors in the deck plating. Crystal beings from the Nexus cluster hummed in harmonic frequencies that could shatter bone, while the gas-form ethereals drifted in containment suits designed for combat. Each species brought their natural advantages, the speed, the raw strength, the Nexus being sonic weapons, the ethereal's ability to phase through solid matter. Had faced them all before and emerged victorious. His confidence remained unshaken. The registration terminal chirped as he placed his clawed hand on the scanner. Immediately, his biosignature was recorded along with his impressive combat statistics. The holographic display showed his bracket position. He would face preliminary rounds against newer species before advancing to the championship matches. That's when he noticed an unusual entry on the tournament roster, a species he had never encountered before, humans. The biodata was surprisingly mundane, no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no obvious weapons. They appeared to be soft-bodied bipeds from a small blue world on the galaxy's outer rim. His mandibles clicked in amusement. Perhaps the tournament organizers were allowing weaker species to participate for entertainment value. The opening ceremony began with traditional displays of combat prowess. Each species demonstrated their fighting capabilities to the roaring crowds. They performed their ritual battle dance, claws gleaming as they moved through ancient combat forms. They displayed impossible acrobatic sequences that gravity. They demonstrated their ability to crush solid metal with bare hands. When the humans were announced, a strange quiet fell over the arena. 3 figures emerged from the contestant tunnel, moving with an odd, measured gait that seemed almost casual. They wore simple clothing with minimal protective gear, carrying no visible weapons. The crowd murmured in confusion. The humans introduced themselves through the translation matrix. The apparent leader, a female with short brown hair, spoke in calm, measured tones. "I am Captain Sarah, representing Earth and the human species. These are my colleagues, Sergeant Mike and Doctor." Studied them more carefully now. They showed no signs of nervousness despite being surrounded by beings that could crush them without effort. Their eyes moved constantly, taking in details of their surroundings with what seemed like analytical interest rather than fear. Most strange of all, the corners of their mouths kept turning upward in what his cultural database identified as smiling, apparently a positive emotional expression. The tournament director, a proud member of the Crystalline Nexus cluster, projected his voice throughout the arena. "These humans claim their species excels at what they call contests. They have requested to demonstrate this unusual concept." Captain stepped forward. "Thank you for this opportunity. On our world, we've developed countless forms of competition that test various aspects of physical and mental capability. We'd like to show you just a few examples of what humans consider fun." The word fun translated poorly across the various alien languages, creating confusion in the crowd. Fun? This was combat, a sacred ritual of survival and dominance. What did fun have to do with fighting? Doctor moved to a collection of simple objects that the humans had brought, spherical items of various sizes, rope-like materials, and what appeared to be small projectiles. She began juggling multiple objects simultaneously while balancing on one foot. The crowd watched in bewilderment as she transitioned into increasingly complex patterns, eventually incorporating fire into her routine. "This is called juggling," Captain explained. "Humans often do this for entertainment and to improve hand-eye coordination. Here holds several regional championships on Earth." Sergeant stepped forward with what looked like a simple rope. He began moving it in rapid circles around his body, jumping over it with precise timing. The speed increased until the rope became a blur, yet he never missed a step. "Jump rope," continued. "Excellent cardiovascular exercise and coordination training. Mike has completed over 3,000 consecutive jumps without error." The alien competitors exchanged uncertain glances. These weren't combat techniques, they were games, children's activities, yet the precision and physical control required was undeniable. Then Captain herself demonstrated something that caused a collective intake of breath across the arena. She approached a wall and suddenly launched herself upward, using tiny irregularities in the surface to climb vertically without any equipment. Her movements were fluid and confident as she scaled surfaces that should have been impossible for a creature without claws or natural climbing adaptations. "Rock climbing," she called down from her position near the arena ceiling. "We do this on Earth for recreation, often on cliff faces hundreds of meters high." His confidence wavered for the first time in years. The humans were demonstrating physical capabilities that seemed to defy their biological limitations. They showed no signs of strain or exhaustion, and more disturbing still, they appeared to be enjoying themselves. The tournament director's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. These activities, they serve no combat purpose. Captain dropped lightly to the arena floor, landing with barely a sound despite the significant height. "Combat purpose, not directly. We do them because they're challenging, because they push our limits, because they're—" She paused, searching for the right translation. "Because they're fun. Humans have developed thousands of different competitions and games. We compete in everything from memory contests to endurance challenges to precision throwing." Doctor retrieved a small white sphere from their equipment. "This is called a ping-pong ball," she announced. She then proceeded to demonstrate control that seemed almost supernatural, bouncing the ball off various surfaces in complex patterns while maintaining perfect control. "Table tennis is quite popular on Earth. Some players can hit this ball at over 100 kilometers per hour while maintaining millimeter precision." The demonstration continued with increasingly impossible feats. Sergeant showed them something called hacky sack, keeping a small bag airborne using only his feet for several minutes. Captain performed what she called freestyle frisbee, making a disc-shaped object follow curved flight paths that seemed to violate basic physics. Each demonstration was accompanied by casual commentary about how these were common recreational activities on Earth, how humans regularly competed in these events for no reason other than personal satisfaction and the joy of competition. The alien fighters began to shift uncomfortably. These weren't combat techniques, yet they required physical capabilities that exceeded many of their own natural advantages. The precision, timing, and body control displayed by the humans suggested a level of physical mastery that was deeply unsettling. Found himself analyzing the implications. If these were their recreational activities, things they did for fun, what were their actual combat capabilities? The humans moved with an efficiency and control that spoke of bodies pushed to their absolute limits on a regular basis. They showed no fear, no aggression, just a calm confidence that suggested they were holding back significantly. The crowd's murmur grew louder as the implications sank in. Species after species began to understand what they were witnessing. These humans weren't demonstrating combat techniques, they were showing off their hobbies. Their casual pastimes required physical abilities that matched or exceeded the natural gifts of species that had evolved specifically for combat. The tournament director's form pulsed rapidly with agitation. You do these things for pleasure." Captain nodded, that strange upward curve returning to her lips. "Among many others. Would you like to see more examples? We brought equipment for several dozen different human games and sports." A heavy silence fell over the arena as the full meaning became clear. If this was what humans did for entertainment, what were they capable of when they were actually trying? The arena fell into an uncomfortable silence as the implications of the human demonstration sank in. Commander felt his combat instincts screaming warnings he had never experienced before. In his 47 victories, He had never encountered anything that challenged his fundamental understanding of combat capability. These humans were rewriting the rules simply by existing. The tournament director's crystalline form continued pulsing in rapid, agitated patterns. "Perhaps we should proceed to the actual combat demonstrations," he announced, clearly hoping to restore some sense of normalcy to the proceedings. Captain exchanged glances with her companions. "Of course, though I should mention we brought equipment for a few more competitive activities that might interest you." Doctor stepped forward carrying what appeared to be several small, colorful cubes. "This is called a cube," she explained, then proceeded to scramble the colored squares into complete chaos. "The goal is to return all sides to a single color." Her fingers moved with mechanical precision, twisting and turning sections of the cube in patterns that seemed random yet purposeful. Multiple eyes tracked the movements, trying to understand the logic behind each turn. The mathematical complexity was staggering millions of possible combinations, yet the humans' movements were confident and decisive. In less than 30 seconds, the cube was solved, each face showing a uniform color. "My personal record is 8.7 seconds, Doctor mentioned casually. "The current world record is under 4 seconds. The delegation, known across the galaxy for their computational abilities and pattern recognition, shifted nervously. Their own mental processing, enhanced by evolutionary pressure and technological augmentation, would require several minutes to solve such a puzzle. This human had done it while having a conversation. Sergeant retrieved what looked like a simple wooden board covered in black and white squares. "Chess," he announced, "a strategic war game that humans have been playing for over 1,500 years. He began setting up small, carved pieces on the board. "We simulate entire armies with each piece representing different military units. The objective is to capture the enemy commander." He proceeded to play against himself, moving pieces in rapid succession while explaining the basic rules. The complexity became apparent immediately. Each piece moved in different patterns, creating an intricate web of attack and defense possibilities. The number of potential game states was astronomical. "Humans have been analyzing this game for centuries," continued, still moving pieces with practiced ease. "Our greatest players can see 20 or 30 moves ahead, calculating millions of possibilities. Some say it's the closest we come to pure strategic thinking." The Nexus Cluster beings, whose crystalline minds could process data at quantum speeds, began humming in distressed frequencies. They recognized the mathematical depth of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just pattern recognition. It was strategic thinking at a level that challenged their own collective intelligence. Captain retrieved a simple spherical object from their equipment. "And this is a basketball," she said, beginning to bounce it rhythmically against the arena floor. The sound echoed strangely in the vast space. "A team sport where humans compete to score points by throwing the ball through an elevated circular target." She demonstrated by launching the ball in a perfect arc toward a maintenance hatch 20 meters away. The sphere passed cleanly through the narrow opening without touching the edges. The regulation target is only slightly larger than the ball itself, positioned 3 meters above the ground. Players regularly score from distances of 7 meters or more while being actively defended by opponents. The mathematical precision required was staggering. Calculating trajectory, accounting for gravity and air resistance, all while in motion and under pressure, yet Captain made it appear effortless. "Humans also compete in something called marathon running," she continued, beginning to jog lightly in place. "We cover distances of over 40 kilometers, running continuously for hours. The current record is just over 2 hours for the full distance." His mandibles clicked involuntarily. His own species, evolved from pursuit predators, could sprint at tremendous speeds, but only for short bursts. Sustained running for hours was beyond their capability. Yet these soft-bodied humans treated it as a casual recreational activity. Doctor had retrieved what appeared to be a small white sphere and a wooden stick. "Baseball," she announced. "We use this bat to hit a ball thrown at speeds exceeding 150 kilometers per hour. The ball is approximately 7 centimeters in diameter, and skilled players can direct it precisely despite having only milliseconds to react." She tossed the ball into the air and swung the wooden bat with fluid precision. The crack of contact echoed through the arena as the ball streaked across the space at incredible velocity. The accuracy was unsettling. She had aimed for a specific point on the far wall and struck it exactly. Professional players maintain batting averages around 30%, she continued, meaning they successfully hit a ball traveling faster than most ground vehicles roughly one time in 3 attempts. This is considered excellent performance. The alien competitors were beginning to understand something that filled them with creeping dread. These weren't combat demonstrations. They were glimpses into a species that had turned physical and mental excellence into entertainment. Every casual activity the humans described required capabilities that matched or exceeded the specialized evolution of entire civilizations. Commander found himself recalculating everything he thought he knew about combat potential. They had evolved natural weapons and armor through millions of years of predatory evolution. They had developed crushing strength to survive on high-gravity worlds. Every species in the tournament had been shaped by hostile environments that demanded specific survival traits. But humans seemed to have developed superior capabilities through choice rather than necessity. They had taken weak, fragile bodies and pushed them to levels of performance that challenged the natural gifts of purpose-built warriors. The tournament director's agitation was becoming visible to the entire arena. "These demonstrations are enlightening," he managed. "Perhaps we should proceed to actual combat trials." Captain smiled again, that disturbing expression that the translation matrices couldn't properly convey. "Certainly, though we should probably mention, humans have also developed competitive fighting systems." Sergeant stepped forward. "Mixed martial arts, boxing, wrestling, judo, karate, Thai," he began listing, counting on his fingers. "We have dozens of formalized combat sports, each with different rules and techniques. Humans regularly compete in these events, often suffering significant physical damage, purely for sport and personal achievement." The implications crashed over the assembled warriors like a wave. These humans had developed multiple combat systems for recreation. They hurt each other for fun, pushing their bodies to the breaking point as a form of entertainment. Doctor retrieved a final item from their equipment, a simple rope fashioned into a loop. "And then there's rodeo," she said with that same disturbing smile. "Humans compete to ride large, powerful animals that are specifically selected for their aggressive behavior and strength. We stay mounted for as long as possible while the animal attempts to throw us off." She began swinging the rope in complex patterns above her head. "This is called lasso technique. We use it to capture those same dangerous animals. The skill requires perfect timing, spatial awareness, and physical coordination." The rope sailed across the arena in a perfect circle, settling around a structural support beam with practiced ease. With a quick motion, Doctor tightened the loop and secured it. "Rodeo competitors regularly suffer broken bones, concussions, and other serious injuries," she continued conversationally. "We consider this an acceptable risk for the challenge and excitement of the sport." A heavy silence settled over the arena as the full picture became clear. These humans didn't just excel at physical activities, they actively sought out dangerous challenges for entertainment. They had developed their abilities not through evolutionary pressure, but through an apparent psychological need to push every limit they encountered. Commander realized with growing horror that he was no longer looking at potential opponents. He was looking at a species that had turned self-improvement into an art form, that sought out challenges and mastered them purely for the satisfaction of mastery itself. The tournament organizers had scheduled exhibition matches to demonstrate each species' combat capabilities. Now, faced with the reality of what humans considered recreational activities, no one wanted to be the first to face them in actual combat. The arena, filled with the galaxy's most fearsome warriors, had grown very quiet indeed. The scheduled combat demonstrations proceeded with an atmosphere of growing unease that permeated the entire Crucible station. What should have been the highlight of the galactic tournament cycle had become something else entirely. A revelation that was reshaping everyone's understanding of what it meant to be a warrior species. Commander watched from the competitor staging area as the preliminary matches began. The traditional displays of combat prowess that had thrilled audiences for centuries now seemed somehow limited. They demonstrated their ability to crush metal barriers with powered fists, but the memory of humans bouncing small spheres with millimeter precision made raw strength seem crude. They performed their graceful four-armed combat dance, but their speed paled in comparison to humans solving complex puzzles in seconds, while maintaining casual conversation. The humans had been assigned to the final demonstration slot, giving the other species time to showcase their abilities first. This scheduling, intended to build suspense, instead created a mounting sense of dread among the competitors. Each impressive display was inevitably followed by the unwelcome memory of humans doing something far more sophisticated for entertainment. The crystalline beings of the Nexus cluster performed their sonic warfare demonstration, harmonizing at frequencies that could shatter most known materials. The arena floor cracked under the assault, and the crowd cheered appropriately, yet found himself thinking about the human called, who had mentioned that humans regularly competed in something called singing competitions where they demonstrated vocal control and artistic expression. If their recreational activities required such precision, what could they do when applying that same control to actual combat? Doctor sat quietly in the competitor preparation area, working on what appeared to be a complex mathematical problem written on a simple piece of paper. She moved between calculations and physical exercises with fluid ease, stretching her limbs, while simultaneously solving equations that would challenge most computer systems. The casual multitasking was more unsettling than any display of raw power. "The preliminary rounds have concluded," announced the tournament director, his crystalline form still pulsing with barely controlled agitation. "We now invite the human delegation to demonstrate their species' combat capabilities." Captain rose smoothly and walked toward the arena center. Her companions followed, still showing none of the pre-combat tension that characterized every other species. If anything, they seemed more relaxed now than during their earlier demonstrations. "Before we begin," announced, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics, "I should clarify something about human competitive philosophy. Most species here today have demonstrated techniques designed to defeat or destroy opponents. Human combat sports operate on different principles." She gestured to Sergeant, who retrieved a set of padded protective gear from their equipment. "In boxing, fighters attempt to score points through precise strikes while avoiding damage to themselves. Contests are won through skill, strategy, and conditioning rather than by causing permanent harm to opponents." Began demonstrating boxing techniques against an imaginary opponent. His movements were fluid and economical, each punch thrown with perfect form while his feet maintained constant motion. The speed was remarkable. His hands moved in controlled blurs while his body stayed balanced and ready to react. "The goal is to win the contest while minimizing injury to both participants," continued. "Humans have learned to fight with controlled aggression, applying just enough force to achieve victory without unnecessary damage." Doctor stepped forward wearing different protective equipment. "Judo represents another approach," she explained. "We use an opponent's strength and momentum against them, redirecting force rather than meeting it directly." She began demonstrating throws and grappling techniques with who willingly played the role of opponent. Their movements looked almost like a dance would attack, and would redirect his energy, sending him tumbling across the arena floor with techniques that used minimal effort to achieve maximum effect. The alien spectators watched in growing amazement as the humans demonstrated principle after principle of combat efficiency. They weren't displaying raw power or natural weapons. They were showing systematic approaches to combat that maximized effectiveness while minimizing risk. "Wrestling," announced, engaging in a different style of grappling. "The objective is to control an opponent's movement and positioning." Their demonstration showed incredible body awareness and balance as they struggled for advantageous positions, each movement calculated to gain leverage while denying it to their opponent. Commander's combat instincts were screaming warnings he couldn't ignore. He had spent his life mastering the use of natural weapons and armor, developing techniques that leveraged his species' evolutionary advantages. But the humans were demonstrating something far more sophisticated. They had developed systematic approaches to combat that could work against any opponent regardless of natural advantages. Captain retrieved what appeared to be a simple wooden staff. "Many human martial arts incorporate weapons training," she explained. "But the weapons are tools to extend technique, not substitutes for skill." Her movements with the staff were hypnotic. The simple piece of wood became an extension of her body, spinning and striking in patterns that seemed to follow some complex mathematical formula. The speed and precision were beyond anything had encountered, yet moved with the same casual confidence she had shown throughout the demonstrations. Bow staff, sword arts, knife fighting, she listed while demonstrating different techniques. Humans have developed systematic approaches to virtually every form of armed combat. We study these arts for physical development, mental discipline, and artistic expression. Doctor had taken position across the arena. We also practice competitive archery, she announced, retrieving what looked like a curved stick and a thin shaft. Precision projectile delivery over various distances and conditions. The bow appeared simple, almost primitive compared to the advanced weaponry displayed by other species. But when drew the string and released, the arrow streaked across the arena to strike a tiny target with absolute precision. She repeated the demonstration from different positions and distances, each shot finding its mark exactly. Human archers can maintain accuracy at distances exceeding 90 meters, explained. Elite competitors regularly achieve groupings within centimeters at Olympic distances. The tournament director's agitation had escalated to visible distress. These demonstrations, he began, then stopped. The crystalline being appeared to be struggling with concepts that challenged his fundamental understanding of combat. Sergeant stepped forward for the final demonstration. And finally, humans have developed something we call obstacle course racing, he announced. We combine running, climbing, jumping, crawling, and problem-solving into competitive events. He proceeded to move through the arena using every available surface and obstacle. His path took him up walls, across suspended cables, through narrow openings, and over barriers that would challenge most species' mobility. The efficiency of movement was extraordinary. Each obstacle was overcome with minimal effort and maximum speed. Parkour, ninja warrior competitions, military obstacle courses, he listed while maintaining his complex movement pattern. Humans regularly compete in events that test our ability to move through challenging environments under time pressure. The demonstration concluded with completing a series of acrobatic movements that would have been impressive for species with natural climbing adaptations. For a being with no obvious physical advantages, the performance was deeply unsettling. Captain faced the silent arena. Human competitive philosophy centers on continuous improvement through challenge. We don't fight to prove superiority, we compete to discover our limits and then exceed them. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. Every species in the tournament had come to demonstrate their natural advantages and evolutionary specializations. The humans had demonstrated something far more threatening proof that limitations could be systematically overcome through training, technique, and an apparent psychological compulsion to excel. Commander realized that the tournament had already ended before it began. His 47 victories meant nothing against opponents who viewed combat as just another problem to be analyzed, understood, and mastered. His natural advantages were irrelevant against beings who had spent their entire civilization developing systematic solutions to overcome any possible disadvantage. The arena remained silent as competitors and spectators alike grappled with a fundamental shift in their understanding. The humans hadn't just demonstrated superior capabilities. They had revealed a completely different approach to existence itself. Where other species had accepted the limitations imposed by biology and environment, humans had apparently decided that limitations were simply challenges to be overcome. The tournament director's announcement came as no surprise to anyone present. In light of these unprecedented circumstances, the tournament organizing committee will need time to evaluate appropriate competitive categories. Translation: the humans had broken the tournament by redefining what it meant to be a warrior species. As the alien competitors began filing out of the arena, Commander noticed that the humans were still smiling. They appeared genuinely pleased with their performance, satisfied with having shared their capabilities with a wider audience. There was no aggression, no sense of dominance or superiority. They had just demonstrated that they were beyond competition with every other known species, and they seemed to consider it a pleasant cultural exchange. Captain approached as he prepared to leave. "I hope we'll have the opportunity to learn about combat techniques," she said with apparent sincere interest. "Human martial artists are always eager to study new approaches and incorporate them into our training." The casual suggestion that they might learn from his techniques, improve upon them, and integrate them into their already incomprehensible skill set was perhaps the most terrifying thing it heard all day. He left the Crucible station with a new understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy. They weren't just another warrior species. They were something unprecedented. A civilization that had turned self-improvement into their primary cultural drive, beings who sought out every possible challenge and systematically conquered it for no reason other than the satisfaction of mastery. The galaxy's finest warriors had been paralyzed by fear, not of human aggression, but of human excellence. They had encountered a species that viewed limitations as temporary inconveniences, challenges as entertainment, and perfection as merely the starting point for further improvement. The humans had won without fighting, conquered without aggression, and dominated without violence. They had simply demonstrated what they considered normal, everyday human activities. And that was the most terrifying demonstration of power the galaxy had ever witnessed.